I've been very blessed with patches of good health and I have a great family that allows me to train and to pursue the things that I enjoy doing. So I've definitely had some success in duathlon, some in triathlon, as I have said, and then also in cycling. So I've definitely had opportunities to participate and do well in most of them.
You are listening to the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast with your host, Eric Logan. No Gimmicks, Just Sweat is dedicated to hearing the journeys and unique stories behind an athlete's training and what drives them. Get inspired to own your life and make the impossible possible. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Also, please take a few seconds to rate the show and drop me a review. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of No Gimmicks, Just Sweat. And today we're welcoming duathlete extraordinary, Travis Tindle. Travis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Eric. How are you?
I am great. So, as with every show, we're going to kind of start with a little warm-up. And that warm-up's going to be, I'm going to throw out a couple of questions to you. First thing that comes to mind, that way the listeners can kind of get to know you a little bit better, as well as I'll learn something new about you that I probably didn't know.
Awesome.
All right, ready?
Ready when you are.
All right. Morning training or evening training?
Both. I do duathlon and triathlon, so a lot of times you have to do double days. I prefer the evening, I would say, but I got up this morning and ran a 5K on the treadmill, so.
Oh, see, there you go. All right, cardio or strength training?
I definitely prefer cardio. I've always been a cardio guy. I do not build muscle well at all. But I've learned as I've gotten older that strength training is a necessity. So I get in trouble frequently because I don't do enough strength training. So I'm starting to focus on that a lot more too.
Embrace the strength training. Embrace strength training.
That's right. That's right. Build those bones and build that muscle to protect you.
All right. Run on a treadmill or run outside?
Oh, I definitely prefer running outside when the weather is right. But I tell you, if it's raining or really cold, I really like having my treadmill in the basement. So I definitely utilize it frequently.
Okay. All right. This is for the triathlete side of you. Open water swim or swim in the pool?
Ooh, swim in the pool for sure. It's hard to drown in a pool, but you can drown in that open water. I definitely do some open water, but and honestly, in Georgia, you can't see in most of the lakes more than a couple of feet. So I'd rather be able to see in front of me. So I swim in the pool a lot.
All right. Ride inside with or without Zwift?
I'm not a Zwift guy, so I'm actually a trainer road guy.
Okay.
And I like to, I also use RGT, which is a Zwift type product. It's actually free, by the way. Yeah, I would like to see more people in the U.S. on it because it's in European kind of time. When the Europeans are awake, it's usually full of people, and when the U.S. folks are awake, it's not quite as full. But anyway, all that to say, I do a little bit of the online stuff, but mostly I'm a trainer road guy because I like their kind of coaching formats and more the structured training than the online racing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Your favorite segment in a duathlon, the run or the bike?
Bike, I would say. Yeah, I started out being more of a runner. Didn't pick up biking until a little bit later. Probably a little better at the running, but I prefer the bike. I would say at least 50% of my training time on the bike. So that's
yeah. If you had said run, I was gonna be surprised.
Yeah.
All right, your favorite race distance: sprint, Olympic, or long course?
I like the shorter stuff. I'm more of a sprint kind of guy. I figured out my body is more built for that stuff. I sweat a lot, which is probably TMI, but I have trouble keeping up with my fluids. And if I do the long distance stuff, if it's just the littlest bit hot, I'm going to cramp like crazy, and I just can't bring in enough fluids. So I like the short distance stuff. So that's been my focus mostly.
Okay. All right. First thing you do after a race?
Well, I would say collapse on the ground usually, but the first thing that is actually the first thing is I collapse on the ground. But I try to rehydrate, eat something, just start to recover my body a little bit, so the rest of the day won't hurt quite as bad. I have been known to have an adult beverage or two as part of my rehydration, so that's probably the biggest thing I do.
Any go-to post-race meal?
Meal wise, I usually I keep it fairly light initially. So I'll, have a banana or whatever's around at the race place, wherever you're racing. But then once I leave the venue, it's, Mexican's probably my favorite after a meal or after a race, which isn't probably the best thing for my stomach, but it sure tastes good.
And believe it or not, you're not the first person to say
that. Yeah. Can't beat Mexican.
All right. A dream race to participate in anywhere in the world?
Oh, let me first say I kind of just did my dream race, which was pretty cool, or a dream for a long time race. I just wrapped up the Xterra World Championships over in Maui, which if you haven't done that one, then I highly, highly recommend it. It's well done, and Maui is just beautiful. So I would say that really was probably my biggest dream race. I've always told my wife, who has wanted to go to Hawaii for years, that the only way I was going to go to Hawaii was if I had qualified for a race over there. So I had two options, either Xterra or the Ironman World Championships. And being the swimmer that I am, I knew that Ironman World Championships were probably not in the cards for a good bit. So Xterra is the way to go. So it was a great race.
Okay, and as we kind of go into learning more about you, you can kind of explain what that race is, because I've heard of it, but I don't really know anything about it. Sure.
It's I'll just say it's an off-road triathlon. So Xterra is like, everybody's familiar with Ironman.
Right.
Xterra is the off-road part of it. So they take the road bike and they replace it with a mountain bike. And the run, they replace the road run with a trail run. The swim is still in the ocean or a lake or wherever you're competing at. So the swim's not much different. But the mountain bike and the off-road run are really the key differentiators between Xterra and other triathlon.
Okay, nice. All right, if you can go on a run, a ride, or train with any celebrity or athlete, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh man, any celebrity, not just an athlete. Dead or alive, man. I don't know. I would say I'm a huge cycling fan, so there are a lot of folks that I'd like to go out and ride with, and I'll just go with some of the contemporaries. I'd say I'll pick Wout van Aert.
Okay.
Just he is, what I think is he's a cyclocross world champion multiple times. I believe he's got 3 cyclocross world championships, as well as being arguably one of the top 2 or 3 road racers in the world right now. So kind of a young up and coming guy at the top of the sport today. I think it'd be really cool to go spend some time with him and get his thoughts on the differences in the disciplines that he competes in. So. Okay. Wout would be my guy.
Okay, cool. All right, last one. Dream location anywhere in the world you want to go for a run or a ride. Not necessarily, not a race, just to relax and just enjoy yourself.
This one's interesting because I do. So when I travel, and I travel a lot for work, I've been to all states except for 2 most of it with work. And I've seen a lot of things, but it's usually when things are closed and either early in the morning on a run or late in the evening on a run. So my tourism is really going on a run. But I will say the state that I haven't been, or one of the 2 states that I haven't been to, is Alaska. And I'd really like to go up there and be able to spend some time outdoors, run in some of the beautiful areas they have there on some of the beautiful trails. So I would say I'd like to go to Alaska and do some long distance running.
Yeah, I think that would be a good place just to go run, just more for the scenic.
Yep.
Just enjoy the scenic, the nature, and just kind of, the purity of it.
Yep. See some bears, hopefully not get chased.
Well, we'll see how fast of a pace you can keep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You would get a speed workout.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. As with every show, we kind of go in to learn more about the guest that's on. And doing so, I always ask the guest to kind of tell their origin story. And to think of you as a superhero. You've gotten powers. Who were you before you got your powers? So before you became the athlete that we see today, what led up to that?
Cool. Well, so trying to figure out how long I need to make the story, but I'll go back to when I was in school, like high school and college. I always played sports. I did not do biking, really running to speak of, or swimming, though. I did other sports. So I did football and basketball, and was really dedicated to those sports. As I got older, though, I graduated high school, and I was a average athlete at best, I would say. So I didn't go on to college and compete or anything of that nature. But I played all the intramurals and all that. But as I got out of college, I picked up golf and started doing that for my competitive nature, and continued to play a little basketball. But a couple years out of college, I'd gotten married, and the wife and I actually took an opportunity to move up north. So I grew up in Oklahoma, and we took an opportunity to move up north to the Chicago area to take a role up there. And then I was also going to grad school at the same time. And what I found out when I moved up north, and having been an avid golfer, kind of turned into an avid golfer after college, about 6 months out of the year, it is really, really cold up there. And don't want to offend anyone from the Chicago area, but and during most of those 6 months, it's really hard to find a white golf ball because there's snow on the ground. So I figured out that golf may not be the year-round sport for me that it had been when I lived in Oklahoma, and really just started going to the gym and started to do a little bit of running. I'd always done basketball and football and stuff, so I could run. I just didn't do a whole lot of distance running, but I started doing some running, and they just had an awesome running community up there. And really, it was year round. It was really cold part of the time, but it was a year round running community. And then on the weekends, especially like in the spring and summer, there would be within 10, 15 miles of my house, there'd be 4 or 5 different 5Ks, 10Ks, et cetera, that I could compete in. So really, when I was up there and the weather was beautiful, it wasn't super hot in the summer, I kind of got into the road racing running scene. About the same time, I was kind of struck by the triathlon bug as well, just because I wanted to go out and try one, and started doing triathlons while I was up there too, but not super seriously. So I was more of a serious runner, not as serious on the triathlon side of the house. I did end up qualifying. I ran the Chicago Marathon while I was up there. Ended up qualifying for Boston, which was a really cool experience. But I would say really just, my love of triathlon, duathlon, road racing, cycling, was just kind of a progression of my love of sport when I was younger. So I've always been very competitive, and it just gave me a chance to kind of get that competitiveness out and go out and do something that was also healthy for me. As I've kind of progressed, though, from that time on, a couple of things have come along in life that have caused me to be a little more focused on kind of health and fitness in general. I will say all three of my parents, my mom, my dad, and my stepdad, all passed fairly early on in life. They were all in their kind of early 60s. And, my dad and my stepdad were smokers, so they both passed from lung cancer. My mom had some other health implications that were from really poor lifestyle choices. So as I've had children and kind of started to think through my own, mortality as my parents passed, it's really made me focus on a healthy lifestyle and going out every day and working out, making sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do to be the most fit person I can be, and to be around, for my kids as they get older. I want to spend a lot of time with my kids and my grandkids. And, I think sports and fitness is really a way for me to do that. And it also, as I said earlier, being a competitive person, it helps me to satisfy those competitive urges that I have, and in a very healthy way. So that's kind of, that's kind of the why behind why I do some of the activities that I do. And then I would say, as I mentioned earlier, I started out being more of a runner. I kind of transitioned into triathlon, but I wasn't really a great biker. I'm still not a great swimmer, but I wasn't a very good swimmer at all when I started out. I thought I could swim, but I was really good at swimming. So I didn't drown in a pond or a lake. I wasn't good at competitively swimming. So there's been a lot of self-development and a lot of learning along the way, to get better and better at the sport. And, for my 30s, I would say mid-pack at, pretty much any sport that I tried. Other than running, I was usually near the top, but I wasn't even as fast in my 30s as I was in my 40s. And then as I kind of learned more along the way and spent a little more time dedicated to it, I kind of got faster and faster as I evolved in the sport and learned more. So that's kind of what's got me here today.
Okay. It's very interesting. The golf thing I did not know about.
Yeah, I was a terrible golfer, by the way. So,
but that's what I was gonna ask. I said, do you still play?
I don't at all. I've got back problems when I golf, so I figured out that golf was actually contributing to some of that, and I can go out and run for hours, and it doesn't bother me as bad as a round of golf. So,
really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep.
All right. So, being an athlete that you are, what does a day or a week of training look like for you? And, are you self-coached or do you have a coach?
So I'm self-coached, I would say, to an extent. I mentioned earlier that I'm a Trainer Road guy. And they don't sponsor me, by the way, or anything of that nature. But I did. So I'll just say I've always said, if I'm not making a living at it, I'll spend money on bikes and going to races and that kind of stuff. But and a lot of people do really well with coaches. But if I'm not making a living at it, that's a big expense, and it's something that I've always just said, hey, I think I can do this myself. But I found Trainer Road probably 4 or 5 years ago, and they've actually evolved their platform a lot over the last few years. And what I really love about them now is they have like a plan builder feature that you can tell it what your races are. You can build your whole season of racing into the calendar, and they'll develop a plan for you that will help you to be ready for your A races primarily, but then also will fit your B and your C races in. So they've got a great, I would say, coaching or plan building platform that allows you for both, for me, they don't actually have a duathlon function. So I do a lot of duathlon, but I use a triathlon plan when I'm doing a duathlon. So They can do great triathlon plans, or if you're just a cyclist and that's really what they specialize in, they've got great cycling plans that will help you to be ready for your best, your biggest event. So I use Trainer Road for coaching. I do spend about 10 to 12 hours, I would say, on average a week training. And that's, run, bike, swim takes a lot of time. I spend, I would say 50% or so of my time on the bike on average. I've had a little injury lately, so it's a little less than that, but, I spend about 50% of my time on the bike, and then the rest of the time is evenly spread between, running, swimming, and then some strength training and yoga, that kind of stuff in there as well. So, that's kind of average time for a training week. And like I said, I do a mix, usually at least 2 days, sometimes 3 or 4 days a week. I'll do double workouts or else a brick workout on the day. So I'll get, a couple of events or a couple of disciplines that I'll train for on the same day.
Okay. So, a lot of times, we don't want to revisit 2020 again, but the pandemic, it happened. So did it have an effect on your training? And, once we kind of moved past the pandemic, well, we haven't really moved past it, but once races kind of started back in 2021, how did you feel coming back into that?
Sure. I would say it had a major impact on my training. I had lots of great plans lined out. I was going to head over to the World Championships for duathlon that year. That got canceled. Actually, I think it got moved a time or two, and then it got canceled.
Yep.
I had national championships aspirations that year. I had just a lot of stuff on the calendar, and it all kind of fell off in 2020. What I will say is I went, and we were talking before we came online about this, but at work I did go remote. So I work for Home Depot. I'll just say it's a great company. They take care of their people very well. They allowed us to go remote at the very kind of onset of the pandemic, and we're scheduled to go back here in a week or so, on a part-time in the office basis, but we've been remote since then, which it's good and it's bad. So what I found was initially I had lots of extra time because I wasn't commuting, and I wasn't actually training for races. So on the weekends, a lot of times if you say you race on a Saturday, well, you want to take off Sunday because you're beat. You just don't want to put in another training session and hurt yourself or what have you. But when I didn't have any races on the calendar, I actually had more training time than I had ever had before. And then the commute time for work was out. So I did find initially that I had a lot more time to train. I just didn't have any events that I was really training for. I was just doing a lot of kind of long, slow distance type of stuff, which was pretty cool. But what I found was slowly the rest of my life kind of expanded and crept into my training time. And then I lost the structure that I had when I was in the office every day. So pre-pandemic, it was not uncommon for me to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, go get a workout in, and then right after work I would hit another workout. And at my office we had a fitness center on the bottom floor, so it was really convenient to do that. What I found kind of post-pandemic was I got out of the habit of that early morning workout, and I started sleeping later, which was great because you can, sleep helps you. But yes. I also got out of my structure, so I had to really work hard to get back into the structure that I had pre-pandemic. I think I'm getting closer to that now. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily all the way back, but the structured side of it was a big thing to adapt to. Then as far as racing goes, like I said, in 2020, almost everything was canceled. But I will say in Georgia, we started to come back to racing on a local level in, I would say, the fall of 2020. I think we had the state championship for mountain bike in October of that year. So I remember that was like one of the first races that I came back and did. we started to have some gravel racing, that kind of stuff that started to come back that fall. And really in 2021, I don't know about you, but I looked at it as kind of a normal season, except for the fact that you needed to wear masks when you picked up your packets and that. But otherwise, it was pretty well a normal season. So, in 2021, I did a couple of Xterra events, as I mentioned earlier. I did a travel event when I went to Hawaii. I did the USA triathlon or duathlon nationals. Yes. So yeah, there were some big events that I was able to do in 2021. So it was really nice to be back to kind of the normal flow of things. I know not everywhere, so you probably have listeners from all over the place. Not everywhere is fully back yet, but it's definitely nice in the southern U.S. to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, see, come to the South.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so you and I initially, I think we followed each other first, but then I think we initially met at the Duathlon National Championship. And, excuse me?
Oh, no, I believe that's correct.
Yes. And, at the time, I only knew of you pretty much duathlon as cycling. So, and I've learned, since then that you also do triathlons. So which do you prefer, the duathlon or the triathlon?
Man, that's hard.
I'm putting you on the spot.
You're going to like my answer because I strongly prefer the duathlon. If we had the same field sizes in duathlon and you had the same number of events in duathlon, that is probably all I would do because I'm a terrible swimmer. Right. And it's not like I don't like it. I'm just not nearly as good at swimming as I am everything else. So yeah, I definitely prefer the duathlon. I've done, like I said, a lot of cycling only races.
Right.
So I really enjoy cyclocross. I really enjoy mountain biking. So I've done a lot of that kind of stuff as well. But I think the duathlon for me is a good fit just because it kind of, I'm usually I always say I'm a better cyclist than most runners, and I'm a better runner than most cyclists. So I may not be elite in either one sport against just the elite runners or just the elite cyclists, but I do both sports pretty well when you start to combine them.
Okay, don't sell yourself short now. To the people listening, the list of accolades he has is long.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yes. Don't be modest. It's sometimes when you work hard to accomplish something, it's good to kind of say, yes, I earned this. So, yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yes. Just, don't be bashful.
All right.
You have the accolades.
Yeah, I will say I've been very blessed with patches of good health and I have a great family that allows me to train and to pursue the things that I enjoy doing. So I've definitely had some success in duathlon, some in triathlon, as I have said, and then also in cycling. So I've definitely had opportunities to participate and do well in most of them.
Okay.
For an old guy.
But that's the thing about it. What is it? 50 is the new 30?
Yeah, that's a
50-year-old
said that. I guarantee you, not a 30-year-old.
So let's talk about duathlon a little bit.
Yep.
So with duathlon, and I love getting people's opinion about this. It's very obviously it's not as popular, as strong as the triathlon side of things here in the U.S. But if you look overseas, especially in Europe, duathlons are, popular. And, you've competed overseas in the World Championships and stuff. So have you noticed that? And, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and I haven't competed in anything other than, I did the World Championships in 2019 in Spain. And it was, by the way, a really cool experience. So if you or any of your listeners ever get a chance to go to one of the Duathlon World Championships. I strongly would recommend it because
I'm trying.
You'll get there, man. Just keep it up. You'll get there. They do a great job on the events. What I was struck by though was, to your point, Eric, there are some countries that come very, very well represented. And I'd say the U.S. in my age group, we had, 3 or 4 people that were there and we were competitive. I think I was the top American, in our group, and I was like 10th. And we have some people that are definitely on the podiums and some that win the world championship, but I was like 10th. And then the other, 4 or 5 were, in the top 20, 30 range. But if I looked ahead of me, and I forget the exact numbers, but like Great Britain had probably 4 or 5 people that were ahead of me. So like Great Britain specifically, I remember just being astonished by the strength of the teams that they were bringing over. And it felt like they had some more like maybe national coaching or something of that nature that was helping them. And they were close. So it was, just a quick flight over. So, they traveled a lot of people, but it did feel like there were some countries that were very well represented. I would say them seemed like Australia and New Zealand both were very well represented. Spent some time with some of the I will say older folks, and I'm in my late 40s, so when I say older, they were older folks from the New Zealand team, and I was just they had been to multiple of these world championship events and were just really gung-ho on the sport. So it was, they really impressed me, but there were several countries that were extremely well represented. That I think to your point, duathlon probably does carry a little more weight in some of the other countries, which, that's great because it brings some good international competition and fun events.
Well, is there a way that we can kind of improve that here in the U.S.? Because you're here in Georgia like me, and you've kind of seen the duathlon field. You might have 200 or 300 in a triathlon event, but then if you got 20 to 30 in the duathlon side, that's a good day.
Yep. I don't know. So I've heard back in the, in the early 90s, maybe late 80s, I don't know, that duathlon did have a few more participants and was almost, even with the triathlon kind of field sizes.
Yes.
I do think, so I will say you do the Try the Parks, which is a local kind of Georgia series, which is a awesome series because it takes you to all the beautiful state parks around the state, and you do a triathlon or duathlon, and they're venues that you repeat every year, so you kind of get to know the course, and it's just a really good series. But they've got a duathlon associated with them, so it's really easy to find duathlons here just because you've got that guaranteed 10 or 15 races right there every year that are going to happen here. I don't think that's necessarily the case in all states where duathlons are quite as common as they are here in Georgia. I lived in Texas, and you could find some there, but there weren't regular series, it didn't feel like, that had duathlons attached to them. So I really think just providing the opportunities would make a big difference, and then hopefully, I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg scenario. So I don't know if the opportunities were provided at one time and people just quit showing up for them because triathlon's a little sexier. And the only reason I say triathlon's sexier is because you do see like the Ironman I remember growing up, you'd see the Ironman on ABC's Wide World of Sports or whatever. Yeah. And it seemed pretty cool, right? You didn't see duathlon in that. So I think triathlon's just got a little more publicity. But I'm with you, man. If we can do anything to promote the sport and get more people to participate, for everybody out there that either doesn't like swimming, is scared of snakes, or doesn't like fish running around their legs or whatever, doesn't want to drown, duathlon's a sport for you. So get out and try it. It's a good time.
Yeah, and and I tell people it's not necessarily you can't swim. Like, well, I can't swim, so I guess I have to do a duathlon. I said I know people who do duathlon that can swim. There's an intimidation factor with swimming when you have hundreds of other people in the water with you.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've as you know, I've done a lot of duathlons, and I'm better at running and biking than I am at swimming. So, and a lot of times I just like it better. I like I said, I'm not a big open water swim guy. You can't see half the time in front of you, so you got your head stuck in the water for most of the time, and you can't see anything. So I prefer to run if I possibly can, rather than do that first leg as a swim.
Yeah, even though we get looked at as the crazy ones, like, y'all want to run twice?
Yeah.
They're like, there's something wrong. I remember somebody would say, like, there's something wrong with you people. You duathletes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it would be good for most triathletes to be able to do duathlon, I would say, because, the world championship that I just got back from for Xterra turned into a duathlon. So the surf was so high. It's thank goodness, because I would have literally died if we would have had to swim in the 15 or so foot waves. It turned into they canceled the swim, and everybody was upset about it, but I was like, I was dancing in the streets because I didn't have to do that swim. So
you were probably rolling your fist around, hand around, like, yeah.
Yep. I was one of the few that was really happy that the swim got canceled.
So do you think that, one way to kind of help kind of bring more light to duathlons is to maybe have elite and a pro status like they do with triathlon? Because, I mean, you always hear about people, the triathlon side earning their pro cards, but you really don't see or hear about that on the duathlon side.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept. I do think it would. I mean, so what I think it would bring, rather than not necessarily people trying to come and earn the pro money, but I think it would bring publicity, advertisement as much as anything, because like the Ironman World Championships or whatever, they want to have the best on it, right? So the people that are trying to earn money are racing the events because there is money there to be earned, and where that same athlete, while they may be the fastest bike run person in the world, they're not going to race a duathlon because there's not a paycheck there. So they're not going to get the coverage that a triathlon would. So I do think that would bring some interest, but I also think that there's value in the grassroots side of the house as well. And I think it's just a lot easier to put on a duathlon than it is a triathlon, because you don't have to have the swim venue. You can do duathlons in virtually any city park, for instance, if you wanted to. So I do think if race promoters would look at kind of the simplicity of it a little bit, and start, it could be no different than your 5Ks that happen every weekend. You could do duathlons every weekend just as simply without a bunch of, without as much labor, without as much time as it takes to put on a triathlon. So I would like to see more of a grassroots movement.
Right. And, and I've mentioned to some of the other race directors that have events that don't include a duathlon, I've kind of said, hey, why don't you, include a duathlon, to your event? And, the kind of the pushback I get is like, oh, it's not going to have enough people.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, but you got to kind of see it, fill it out, and see what happens. Yeah, you're not going to get 100, 200 people sign up for it. I was like, but again, if you're getting, 10, 20, 30, 40 people, that's a good turnout for a local event.
Yeah. And if you think about it being like Try the Parks does it as a sister event to the triathlon, the question for me would be, and I'm a numbers guy, so are the people that show up to do the duathlon truly incremental people? Or are there people that are moving over from the triathlon to do the duathlon instead? And to your point, I think there are a lot of people probably like yourself that they're going to do a duathlon, but they probably wouldn't do that triathlon.
Right.
So if you can show, and they, for the triathlon, they're already blocking the streets off. They've already got the officers paid. They've already got the shirts bought. They've already got the bibs. They've already got everything there for the triathlon. Well, if you can add 20, 30, 40 people, whatever the number is, of paid registrants just by having a duathlon along with it, then you would think it would be financially feasible. Right.
Well, maybe one day. Keep my fingers.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we talked yesterday offline about the USA triathlon, the way that they're doing the multi-sport events this year rather than a specific duathlon event. And I do wonder what will happen with registration there. So will people like me, so I'm going to likely go to the event and do the super sprint triathlon because I'm more of a short distance guy, as well as the duathlon because they're on different days. So will there be people that will go and now we'll do multiple events? So more people are doing duathlon than have ever done it before. That might be the solution, but got to try it. We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because I think I think I went to my first one in 2018 and then 2019. Of course, we didn't do 2020 and then 2021. And I think we were averaging maybe about 900 to 1,000.
Yeah, something like that.
And I think they said 2019 was like the most they ever had participating.
Yeah, and I was being the year after COVID hit, I was kind of impressed by I know the numbers were down versus what they were before, but if you look at 2021, I mean, it felt like there were a pretty decent number of people in the venue in Alabama as well.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was more than I even expected to be there.
Yep.
So it was a good turnout.
Yeah.
But again, it was a duathlon side. So, you weren't expecting 500 to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's kind of flip it over a little bit. You also mentioned cyclocross. I kind of have an idea of what cyclocross is, but what is cyclocross for listeners who might not understand what it is?
Yeah. So the way that I usually explain cyclocross is everybody knows what road biking is. So, and everybody knows what mountain biking is. So imagine if you took your road bike from the road biking course and tried to go out and do the mountain biking course. And that's kind of what it is in the Atlanta area. We do have a lot of more, kind of rougher. A couple of our courses are pretty rough. But it's basically, it's meant to be more of a winter sport. So the season runs from, September, October through, well, I just went to to view the World Championships in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So they had it for the second time ever in the U.S. this year, which was really a cool experience. But basically, it's a winter sport that really for a long time, road cyclists, that were just more dedicated to road have been doing in the winter, just kind of to stay fit. They're shorter events. They're anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour long, typically. You are in basically a field or a city park or something of that nature, that you ride your bike around, and you do have the bikes look like road bikes. They've got the curly handlebars, but they're more akin to kind of today's gravel bikes. They've got knobby tires, and a little bit different geometry, but they look more like, your traditional road bike. So you're riding them out in the field, and you're getting off to jump over barriers. You're getting off to run up super steep hills. There's a little bit of run involved, but a whole lot of biking. So it's just kind of a combination of lots of cycling events like mountain bike and roads.
So obstacle course racing.
It is. Yep. I've also described it before as steeplechase for the bicycle.
Okay. That sounds about right.
And I tell you, Well, really, like Belgium and the Netherlands is where, the sport is strongest. But if you, um, I will say again, it's more of an off-season type of activity. There are usually lots of adult beverages. It is extremely spectator friendly, so there are large crowds a lot of times, and there are hand ups where you may be racing on the course and somebody's handing you bacon, a donut, a cold beer, whatever spectators are handing you. So it's a good time. It's a good time, but it also helps you stay fit. So
Okay. All right. Couple specific questions. So, what is your go-to running shoe?
Well, for me, I've worn Saucony Kinvaras since I don't know what they're like on 13 or 14 now. I think my first was actually Kinvara 1 way back when. So I've mostly trained in Saucony Kinvaras. I've raced in them a lot. I have also raced a fair amount in Type A, Saucony Type A's, the racing flats, and recently I've got the Endorphin Pros, but the Kinvara is kind of my go-to kind of training shoe and the one that I rack up all the miles in.
Okay. And this next one will probably have multiple answers, but what bike do you use?
Well, I will start out by saying I am an ambassador for State Bicycle Company, which is a really cool company. So they have pretty affordable bikes, and they kind of started out as more like fixie and single speed kind of stuff, but they branched into off-road. They do cyclocross / gravel bikes now that are really cool. So of course I've actually got 4 different state bicycles. Sorry, I forgot one. So I ride those a lot. But I've also got several other bikes. So I've, specialized my mountain bike, my primary mountain bike other than my state mountain bike is a Linsky Titanium. So, I race a little bit of everything.
I follow you, so I know you do.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a 2-part question here. So, what is your proudest moment as an athlete? And then the second part is your worst moment or biggest mistake as an athlete.
Well, I will say my proudest moment is probably the 2019 Duathlon National Championship. I was fortunate enough to win my age group that year and be the national champion, which is a huge honor and something that honestly I never thought that I would get.
You still there?
A sprint draft.
Yeah, I lost you for a moment.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my phone was ringing. That must be what it was.
Yep, that's what it was. So it was the proudest moment, and you said you won the national championship.
Yeah, it was the Duathlon National Championship in 2019, and as you know, most of them there's like a standard distance event, which is a longer event, more of an Olympic distance. If you're a triathlete, you would know it as. Then there's a sprint distance that's draft legal, and then there's a non-draft sprint distance. So in 2019, I had done the sprint distance, both the draft legal and the non-draft, and I did the draft legal on day 1, and a couple of guys who I won't name names, but they just kicked my butt. I ended up 3rd on the podium, which was great. That was kind of my objective, was to get on a podium that weekend. So I did that, but I got to talking to those guys at the award ceremony, and both of them said they were going back. They weren't racing the next day. And I actually wasn't planning on racing the next day either, but because my daughter had a concert that she had to play at. So, and I still feel a little bit bad about this, but I kind of went home or back to back to my camper, which was where I was staying, and started looking at the fields and looked at who was racing and who had raced that day. And I was like, there's a chance I could maybe win this if I stick around. So I called my daughter and told her I would have to get, hey, Eric, we're back.
We're back. So I think we left at, you were talking about the sprint distance at the national championship.
Yep. So I had raced, I don't know how much this you got, but I had raced the prior day in the draft legal event and just got my butt kicked by a couple of guys, and which they were both faster than me. Which was what I expected. So my goal for the weekend was I just hoped to be able to get a podium out of the weekend. I signed up for 2 races, but I kind of said, well, my daughter actually had a concert the next day on Sunday. And I said, well, if I can get a podium at least on Saturday, I'm probably going to go home and watch my daughter's concert in person rather than having to watch it via FaceTime or something. So my plan was to go home. But I went to the award ceremony that evening and got to talking to the 2 guys that beat me. And they were like, well, we're both going home because we got family stuff to do. This is what happens when you're an old guy, and you're doing a age group racing. We got family stuff to do, so we're going home. And I was like, well, maybe I have a chance if I hang out. So I went and kind of looked at who was signed up, and there were some really a couple of fast dudes that were coming, that hadn't raced the prior day, but I thought I might be able to beat them. So I ended up calling my daughter and saying, hey, honey, I'm gonna miss your concert. I'll watch you on FaceTime. And she was okay with that. But so I hung around Sunday. And what I can say about the race Sunday is we talked about cyclocross earlier. Those are usually bad cold weather type of events. And I've done a lot of racing in really inclement weather. And I've always done really well in those types of situations. And really, I think a lot of it is just more mental than anything. I just, I've trained myself now to think I do well in those types of situations. But there was a giant storm coming in for the race.
Oh, I was there.
Yeah. So they shortened the race.
Yes.
Dramatically. And actually my bike was racked and helmet was on it and all that kind of stuff in transition area. And about 20 minutes before the race, a giant windstorm came through and it blew my stuff all over and everybody's stuff all over the place. So we had to go search for our things. I literally had to go outside of the fence to find my helmet. I ran over to my camper, which was parked close by. And I actually had a set of training wheels that I grabbed because I had a disc wheel on the back of my bike. And I knew if a windstorm was happening, there's no way I was going to be able to ride with a disc wheel. Right. So I swapped my wheels out. Anyway, all this stuff was happening. And I kind of psyched myself out to think, hey, this is kind of meant to be because the weather is terrible, just like I like it. Everybody, is probably off of their game. If I'm ever going to win a national championship, this is my chance. I am going to lay it all out and go just as hard as I possibly can. Right. So that was kind of my mentality going in. And I can tell you from the gun, I just pushed the red line just as hard as I possibly could. And luckily the event was shortened because I think the event took 20 something minutes to complete. If it would have taken 30 minutes, I would have probably died. But I had just enough to get across the line, and I ended up winning the event. So that's definitely I would say my biggest accomplishment. And really it's kind of that much sweeter just because of the conditions were rough, and I feel like I was able to kind of overcome some things that maybe other folks weren't able to. So it was pretty cool. I think you also asked me about kind of my biggest letdown so, and I will say I have done fairly poorly in some events. It just didn't live up to kind of what I thought I would have, could have done or whatever. But, I will say really the biggest thing I would say that's more letdown oriented or just I haven't been able to do as well as I wanted was because a lot of times I just would have many times failed to listen to my body and do the right thing from a injury standpoint. And, you get injured, instead of taking a couple of weeks off when you're leading up to a big event, you want to go ahead and train through it and try to get through it. And that usually doesn't go well. And I could say, in my most recent event, the Xterra race that I did recently, I had an injury back in October. I did take some time off, but not enough time off. I didn't get through an injury, and I didn't do nearly as well as I had hoped, just because I had some injury and I just didn't listen to my body properly.
Okay. And I think that happens to all of us at some point.
Yeah.
We get that ego, and that's what it is. It's ego.
Yep.
And our body is trying to fight and say, hey, slow it down, do this, do that. But our ego takes over.
Yeah, I found there's a fine line between, sucking it up and being tough and just not listening to the signs that your body is trying to throw up and tell you, hey, I can't do this anymore. You really need to take some time off and rest me and recover. So.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
All right. So what's a non-athletic fact about you that most people don't know? Like, for instance, I didn't know about the golf. So
sure. I'm pretty boring, I will say. I guess the one that I often throw out is my wife and I we've been married for 23 years now, but we've lived in 12 different houses and had 12 different moves over the course of 23 years. So my poor wife has become a real road warrior. Actually 100% of those have been corporate moves. So I've worked for General Electric, had a few moves with them. I worked with Service Master for a brief period, and then I've worked with Home Depot since then and had a bunch of moves with Home Depot. So we've made the rounds, and rather than traveling, we've just moved wherever we wanted to go. So it's been interesting.
Okay. All right. So is there anything that you're getting ready for? Like what's next for you? Any races or anything coming up?
Well, I've got some on the calendar, kind of. I've not put much on the calendar for 2022 yet. I did mention earlier, my injury before Xterra, it's still kind of lingering. So I'm trying to take some of that time that I should be taking now and get back to full strength. So a lot of work in the weight room, as well as going to some PT sessions and that kind of stuff. So lighten the load a little bit. But I do have early April, late April, the Duathlon Triathlon Multisport Festival that's on the calendar. Tentatively, I haven't actually signed up for it yet, but that'll probably be my first A race. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I got into the lottery for the Unbound gravel race in June. So that's going to be a really long bike ride that's on the calendar as well. And really, those are the only two things that I have on the calendar right now.
Okay. All right. You got any last words for the listeners?
No, I appreciate you having me on. This has been fun. Definitely encourage people to get out there and, be fit. So whether you like to compete or whether you just like to get out and run, ride, bike, whatever sports you like to do, go out there and be fit and make sure you're taking care of yourself. So I appreciate you having me on, Eric.
Oh no, I'm glad you came on. I appreciate you coming here. So how can people get in contact with you if they want to kind of, learn more about what you're doing or, ask you, for some advice?
Sure. I will give you my Instagram. I will give it to you so you can link it if that works. You can search it you can search by Tindle TR and find me, or I believe you can do Run, Ride, Race and find me as well. But I'll give you my Instagram for that.
Okay. All right. Again, Travis, thank you for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. We really appreciate everyone who tunes in each week. If you enjoyed today's show, please support us by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to tell your friends about the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast, so we can continue to have awesome conversations with everyday athletes just like you. Until next time, have an amazing week.